Hi, everybody. Welcome to the monthly conversations about art at the Sasse Museum of Art, which is out in the blogosphere, or the internet, I should say. And we're all over the world today and all over the North American continent. So that's great. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally what we do in these conversations is we talk about art. You know, we have a conversation with the current artist showing at the Sasse Museum. But tonight what we're going to do is we're going to have introduce ekphrasis. Now, if you, we can do that later, Robbie. We're going to talk about ekphrasis, and if you're many of you are familiar with what that is. Some of you may not be. So let me give a little bit of overview. Ekphrasis is just a fancy word for writing poetry or doing anything really about another art form, right? So you can have fiction phrases, but it's normally poetry. Now you think to yourself, well, that's pretty rarefied. I've never heard of anybody doing that before. Sure you have. John Keats' Ode on a Grecian Urn, for example, is ekphrasis. The oldest example of ekphrasis that I'm aware of is Gaius Catullus from the Roman Empire practice ekphrasis, but I'm sure it's older than that. Maybe it's on the Gilgamesh epic. I don't know, but it's a very old form and it's gaining more popularity. I'm going to ask also that you turn off, that you mute your microphone. We're hearing somebody's background. This as well. It might be Carol's phone. Carol, would you mind muting yourself?
They're hearing all this in the background. I'm not being
Okay, there we go. Okay, so ekphrasis has been going on for a long time, and it is, we have some poets here who do it very well. So we have three poets. We're going to start with Stephanie Hammer. We also have John Buckley and Anna Marie Fry. I am just going to read their introductions and then I'll let them go. They'll go for 10, 15 minutes each, and then we can have a conversation. You ask whatever questions you like. Okay. First up, it's going to be Stephanie Hammer, and I'm just going to read all their bios first. Stephanie Barbe Hammer is a 7-time Pushcart Prize nominee in fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. She's published in the Belleville Literary Review, Hayden's Ferry Review, and Cafe Irreal. She's the author of 2 poetry collections, 2 novels, a novelette, and a How to Write Magical Realism craft book. Originally from Manhattan, Stephanie lived in Southern California for 30 years and now currently resides on Whidbey Island, Washington State. She's managing editor at Sharfree Literary Magazine and is cultural editor at large and writer at the Journal of Radical Wonder. I'm sorry, it's my wife's name. Anne Marie Fyfe has published 5 collections and a literary travel personal memoir, No Far Shore, Charting Unknown Waters by Saren 2019. Born in Cushendale, County Antrim, she lives in London, where she has run Coffee House Poetry since 1997, organizes the Troubadour International Poetry Prize, is a poetry coordinator for the John Hewitt International Summer School, is former chair of the Poetry Society, and was 2019 writer-in-residence at Lenore Ryan University in North Carolina. John Buckley is our third poet. He lives in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where he teaches at the University of Michigan. His publications include various poems, 2 chapbooks, the collection Sky Sandwiches, and with Martin Ott, Poet's Guide to America, and Yankee Broadcast Network. His website is johnbuckley.net. He's the fiction editor of the journal Third Wednesday. All right, so we're just gonna launch this off, and if you want to get a really big view, you can go to the view and pin the speaker, and then you'll see that person in all of his or her glory. Okay, so why don't we start with Stephanie? Stephanie, please take it away.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Anne Marie and John, it's wonderful to meet you, and I'm really looking forward to hearing you. So I love going first, so I can just relax and really enjoy what you have to say. I learned the word ekphrasis actually fairly recently, and imagine my pleasure at learning this word because I grew up in New York City and I grew up going to museums. But that said, I'm going to attempt to share my screen and start you off with some really high art. So hang on just a second. I think I've got it. And here it is. My first poem is something called a cavanet, which is a form I made up. It's basically a sonnet, but it's got 19 syllables to the line in honor of COVID. I wrote it a couple of years ago, as you'll hear at the end. This is Splendor in Eternity. I'll always remain enamored with Queen of the Nile, Cleopatra. Crazy, I know. I'm a Jew now, so what in the world am I doing being in love with an Egyptian queen? Answer, Liz Taylor, convert, in that crazy film from the 60s. Was it terrible? Yes. Does every actor chew the scenery? They do. OTOH, the extreme eye makeup, and the almost nudity. That remains my favorite part. Liz lolls in her private sauna, and can she loll? Rex Harrison is Caesar, waltzes in just as the gorgeous handmaid enfolds Liz's bare ass with a towel at the last second. The dialogue silly, but who cares? The entire school year of 1964, I pretended her. My couturier Gramps revamped a dime store costume with a gold spangled headdress he'd made from a hanger. It had a snake. I was a Halloween queen that year, despite the fact that I wore glasses most days and had only one friend who told me in the school bathroom she didn't like me as her new friend jiggled the soap dispenser. Those were hard days. Now is better, even in quarantine. So that's my love for Liz Taylor. And I'm going to move you on to another one of my favorite female icons, and that is the fabulous Ava Gabor as Lisa Douglas in a rather incredible television show called Green Acres that some of you may remember. I currently live in a very, very rural area, and so I continually invoke Ava as my muse to help me sort out living in the country. So this is a poem with a very long title. This is Ava Gabor encourages the poet to take a break from the country in the guise of Lisa Douglas from Green Acres, with adjectives taken out and every other line erased per a Bernadette Meyer prompt. Bernadette Meyer is an amazing poet who gives out these really crazy prompts so that forcing you to kind of erase certain parts of your poem. And I love what she does when I'm trying to edit. So here it is. Darling, give me the city rather than this emergency of evergreenery with these neighbors all identically. There you are with makeup, bras, manifestos, sans cleaner, florist, taco truck, faux kiosk, subway, bus, or taxi. You moisturize, catch up on the owls with your stock of wine. It won't help. You'll need a room in a city, someone spitting on pavement, a dollar store, an opera, Sephora, sirens, yelling. You'll get grounded by noise. Believe me, heaven is. It's hell that's. Don't beat yourself up for being a city slicker. Even Joni Mitchell lives in LA now. She knows where the doctors are, and she knows that there's supermarket delivery. People aren't in the country. Remember how you stood at that bus stop for hours, waiting till it dawned that the route was changed? No one stopped. So forget it. Take a plane. Just don't flip pancakes in a negligee while you climb a pole to answer the phone. So thank you, Ava, for helping me understand my situation. That poem is from my forthcoming chapbook called City Slicker, and that's going to be available for pre-order in a couple of weeks. So moving on, I was delighted to learn in the Princeton Encyclopedia that one of the origins for ekphrasis is actually in the Iliad, which is a narrative. So I'm going to read a little bit of a speculative nonfiction piece that got published in the Goldman Review in 2020. And for some reason tonight, I'm giving you lots of long titles. This one also is a very long title. This is my mother and the mother of my husband, Larry Barrett, moved to Paris in 1958, according to an alternative timeline. And I'm realizing we seem to have an early 60s theme going on, late 50s, early 60s theme. So here's a bit of that piece. You hurt me, Larry. Instead of sitting in a Long Island Rambler, your mother, or a Manhattan apartment, my mother, with depression and cancer, both our mothers, and husbands who never come home for dinner because they work for their fathers, your father, or who drink and see another woman, my father, our mothers, Charlotte Barrett and Barbe Hammer, pack up their bags and move to Paris, France. Larry, you have maintained in a previous conversation that there are obstacles to making this alternative history work as a believable narrative. But Larry, I say, they need a change. They need to meet in 1958 when I am 4 and you are 3. How, you want to know? Hey, they both like art, so maybe they meet at the Modern Museum of Art. But they are both so shy, you say. Yes, they'll need some sort of inciting incident. What about if Charlotte tries to get a taxi outside the museum? She is standing there waving at the darting yellow cars, and Barbe comes out of the museum and sees her. This woman is so beautiful, Barbe thinks, and she wears her hair up, which she, Barbe, can never manage. She also admires that Charlotte is wearing a store-bought dress. Barbe's father designs her clothes, and she's sick of not being able to choose the fabric or the color or the cut. Besides, Charlotte looks like Mary Tyler Moore. Endearing. Excuse me, Barbe says to Charlotte in a surprisingly low voice, because she's taken acting and thought about acting as a career, but the actual auditions are frightening. And the entire process, except for being on stage itself, is too terrifying to consider. Charlotte turns fearfully, but now she sees another pair of brown eyes like hers, dark, lustrous hair like hers, a woman who is about the same height, although she is older, which means more sophisticated, worldly, entrancing. You can probably take the bus, Barbe tells Charlotte. The bus? Charlotte says. She thought that if you were high class, which this woman obviously is with her engagement ring made of artfully shaped sapphires and her clearly couture dress, you only took taxis. Sure, says Barbe. And because Charlotte looks like her and seems as lost as she often feels, she hazards another question. Where are you going exactly? Penn Station is the answer. Now Barbe lifts her chin with happiness because one thing she knows like the back of her hand is the Manhattan transit system. This way, says Barbe. The women walk to 7th Avenue. They rave about Chagall's I and the Village painting. Isn't there something jolly, says Barbe, stepping carefully in her black patent high heels, about that giant green face and that cow? Chagall lived in Paris, Charlotte says. I'd love to go there. The Parisians can be mean, Barbe says knowingly. She's been there as a kid with her dress designer parents. Charlotte nods. So many people in the world are mean, she offers. Barbe smiles as the bus lumbers down the crowded avenue. Thank you for your help, Charlotte says. Perhaps I'll see you at MoMA again. I come during my lunch hour, says Barbe. I'm secretary to a publisher. Office work is thrilling, says Charlotte. They meet often and perambulate the still unexpanded, intimate museum. I don't like Picasso, Barbe confides. The rose and blue periods are okay, but those later paintings, let's face it, ugly. Charlotte agrees. I like Miro and Modigliani, she says. Then she notes, funny, there aren't very many women painters. Those fellas all have creative mistresses, and the women don't have time to paint because they're too busy being sexy all the time for the men, says Barbe. I want to live someplace where I don't have to be sexy for anybody, Charlotte says. Me too, says Barbe. That does it. They decide on the spot to move to the sexiest city in the world, a city whose very streets ooze the hormones of thousands of years. You as an individual don't have to be sexy in a place like that. A place like that does all the work for you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Stephanie. That's wonderful. I love thinking your parents going through there. I am currently in the middle of writing a review for Stephanie's newest book, Pretend Plumber, and I'll just give you the overview. It's really good. You should buy it. There it is. Excellent, and with a cover like that too. All right. Why don't we go with Anne-Marie next? So Anne-Marie, please take it away.
Okay. Well, it's lovely to be part of this reading at the Sasse Museum of Art and to be in spirit in Pomona. And thank you, John, for inviting me to be part of this evening. Great to be reading with John and Stephanie. And hi to those in the small hours in London or on an East Coast late night or in person on a balmy California evening, which I think it is there because I looked it up. I was last in LA at an AWP conference a few years ago, after which I spent a month at Robinson Jeffers Tour House in Carmel. But I've been in the US every spring for a dozen or so years, up to the pandemic. So mostly university and college visits, residencies, book tours, and a coastal travel odyssey that became my most recent poetry and prose memoir. And I was due to tour with the new book in 2020 from New York to Cape Breton Island in Canada, as well as visiting much of Scandinavia. Obviously, all those good plans got put on hold, but I have been, more or less, round the world virtually in the past 2 years, thanks to this wonderful medium, which is Zoom and means I can be here tonight. And in all that travel in the US and in Europe, the one thing I get to find in every new city or town is the art gallery. I just have to find it, or galleries. And that's as an art lover first, then as a writer, because the visual arts are so often a trigger, a connection, a catalyst for writers, as well as pure pleasure per se. And so to the writing, I'm going to read just a few poems. As you can imagine, one of the pleasures of publishing a book is finding the perfect cover image. something that captures the essence of the work. And over a number of books, I've used paintings from artists in the north of Ireland where I grew up, and I've spent many wonderful hours in the Ulster Museum's collections in Belfast. I'll just give you a sort of idea of covers. These are just some of them, and it takes a long time to find just the right cover. But it's not just Irish painters, of course, and I have several paintings by the artist Nicholas Slattery, and I'm just going to hold this one up close so that you can see. That's better, right? And what fascinated me about this image was the ominous feeling that one gets from that house on a stark headland, very much like the house that I grew up in, which had the sea on three sides, and the sense that we carry our home with us, our past with us, wherever we go, like this child is carrying a doll's house. And this is a little poem that came from this image. Headland House. There's the same curve in the road, but the arc seems smaller. As you near each night, oxygen thins. There's the same sycamore, the same red door, unpainted, unlatched, and your doll's house is still in the attic. One of the great joys of a museum exhibition is the way in which images and installations have been collected, put together to present to us a whole world in one space. And while museums show us what is and how it should be viewed, in this poem, I wondered about how one's whole past life might look in a series of gallery images. The Museum of Might Have Been opens its doors one Sunday a month in winter. The queues back up for decades. If you're lucky and your number's called, you can have any tour, your charmed life, your regrets, the prodigal you, every second slip road at the intersections of the possible. The exhibits are stark and infinite, under-stripped neon, long hallways of lost opportunity, slow clocks, stopped clocks, rooms where even now a thought might wither. The attic storeroom is out of bounds to all but the curators, though artifacts are still donated by the hour. Standing in line is no guarantee of admission. Some days word spreads that when you reach the queue's head, pass through the double doors, it'll be stripped out, even light bulbs with only packing materials and discarded drapes left. Yet critics insist the multiple choice foyer, the roads not taken gallery, the back burner cafe are stunning. Every room's a tasteful shade of apple white, apparently. Waxworks and living statues rehearse at intervals for the balcony scene, the shining city, the reconciliation, over and over, night by night, as in the finest operas. In thinking about the relationship between the image or artifact and what one is inspired to write from that, one example that still puzzles is the relationship between this image and what poem came from it. So you see that very odd thing. So this is a full-sized aeroplane knitted in red yarn in a room in an English country house gallery near Oxford. And this, the plane is clearly doomed, but the imaginative journey it took me on, was my convent school in Ireland, Christmases at home in the Glens of Antrim, and a street trader's stall in Galway. It's just amazing how much can come from just one image. The red aeroplane. From the oratory window, I witness mid-air doom, a slew of concentric swirls, a trail of forge sparks, and that's it, a vermilion two-seater, stagger wing loops earthbound, so much depending upon centrifugal drive. Slivers of toughened glass spangle the outer stone sill. The vacant co-pilot seat is plummeted deep in rosebed mulch. I question now if the red biplane ever was, the way sureties tilt and untangle from any one freeze frame to its sequel. Maybe I was glimpsing that two-seater red pedal car, injection molded plastic, collected one Christmas Eve night for a fevered child, or conflating the replica cherry red 63 we toyed with, tinkered with briefly on a tinsmith's covered stall that drenched Saturday. What can't be cast in any doubt is the wreckage, a fragmentary scattering, the mangledness on the far side of glass, and how a Galway blue skyscape proves ineluctably the exponential function of tangents. And the last poem I'm going to read is one where a visual image in the Tate Gallery in London crystallized for me a line I'd written in a notebook on the afternoon of 9/11. I was in an internet cafe in London watching those planes on a large screen fly into the Twin Towers again and again, while my daughter was mid-flight somewhere between Heathrow and Sao Paulo in Brazil. The line was, "A plane flies off a map's edge today." And it seemed to me that the whole known world of flight was somehow changed for forever at that moment. And the line then came back months later when I was transfixed by a very large canvas by the Scottish painter Michael Andrews of a close-up plane in flight with seemingly only darkness behind those small, sort of eerie cabin windows. The poem itself goes back to the days of flying boats and island hopping, partly, I guess, because my daughter was en route to South America, and partly because that seemed to be a lost romantic era of airborne adventure before the awareness that flight would be remembered differently for a very long time. The poem won an international competition and earned me £5,000 or about $7,000. And I decided the best way to spend the money was to buy a painting, something I didn't expect to own and could then enjoy every single day, such is the joy and pleasure in art. And this is the poem. Curacao, dusk. A plane flies off a map's edge today. At the Consul O'Hara inhales the ozone of Curacao dusk. Manila postcards, weightless with pre-printed greetings, flutter in confined space, franked, illegibly signed. The manifests well under payload. Faces in cabin windows are graven waxy masks, their sightlines uninterrupted by pitchy flights of eastbound ebony swans. The holds a chaos of tethered cockatiels, small gods from Suriname. Bursting valises disgorge wristwatches, standby parachutes, a crushed trumpeter's mute. The co-pilot stows isobar charts, taps the compass twice for luck. He mouths a childhood formula under clear water skies, before resuming routine announcements to the remnants of a cabin crew. And thank you all for listening. That's my bit.
Thank you so much, Anne Marie. And I recommend all of her books, available wherever books are sold, right?
Thank you.
All right, John Buckley. John, take it away.
You know, I heard this was a poetry reading about ekphrasis, and I thought, I have a lot of poems. I definitely know exactly what poem is predicated on which Kandinsky painting that I wrote so many years ago, and there must be more of them. Then I remembered I don't like that poem very much at all. And I looked through all my many poems and I realized, oh, I often can't remember what prompted this inspiration or that result. So I'm just going to read some, I'll work backwards. I'll read some most recent work, and then I'll sort of wonder what happened to make things this way. Consecration. I used to know how to talk to people. As they flickered on the walls of my cave, I fed them light banter and gluten-free Yorkshire pudding. The batter was soggy, the pudding banter eggy, the people sheer phantoms from an over-hot clout-worthy head, or so I thought. If they were real, why were they here? Why wouldn't they take me with them? Lonely days with delicious treats. I knew how to talk to people without scales and processes from on high. These were the days before strictures, just reckonings, before the Lord graffitied my sweaty bedsheet hanging wet on the line. Many, many tickle a person, and I felt their hands upon me, the invisible rat-scrabbling hands of tiny angels at my ribs, my waist, my armpits, my inseam. I giggled. I wasn't happy. They brought forth golden tape measures of infinite distances, recorded my numbers, selected an appropriate fabric for a final suit. One more thing, he said, capital H saideth, one more thing. And there in the room where I live, in my house just down the street from good people, I felt again the presence of the Lord, two divine fingers like hooks in my nostrils, four in my mouth, pulling my jaw open, filling my sinus cavity with barnacles. I still feel their feathered legs wriggle. I sneeze, they hold fast, divinely stuffed mollusks on my inner snot keel, going nowhere, sweeping my membranes, keeping my nose clean. You're welcome, he said. Now shut up and sit tight. So I'm not sure when this happened, but the Future of American Poetry called to have me arrested for loitering by the employee parking lot. Cops came, unsuccessful at coping with life stressors and institutional groundswells. Not that I could get them to open up and admit their inner needs, the deep abyssal thirsts, their yearnings to pack it all in and move to a mountain cabin in Appalachian, North Carolina, some secluded space to catch their breaths and work on their memories, because shit, man, the things they've seen, the things they've done, what they thought they had to do before the white clouds parted and their eyes opened wide, some place to process the bad dreams in sunlight. Police officers came, spurting rabid and spouting and frothing for days as I really, really tried to explain my position, my own simple desire to assemble a moving career out of words, pretty lies, and poorly served memories. Move along, they said. Move along so there won't be any trouble. Lord forgive you, be booked again. I asked them to calm down. I said, please calm down, please. I have a privileged pedigree. I wear high pants and straight hair. But you can't tell the police to calm down. You can't tell anyone to calm down, to have them calm down. It's a natural fact. They started reaching for hard rods. I scrambled, offered nursery rhymes while I rubbed their backs. I said, you do what you need to do. I don't want to escalate anything. I stand there still, submission received. Now this one, I know where this came from. This came from living in California for almost 20 years. Most recently, before I left to go back to Michigan, where I'm originally from, lived in Orange County. This is Southland Triptych. It's a poem that has sections. Section 1. This is the most important perspective. You can spot the heart of Los Angeles throbbing in pain, the wet intersection of magic and trauma. I tried to drive there with a GPS, but magnetic people capsized my bearings. So Burbank, never again. Once you're up at this crucially storied and lucrative vista point, they say some profits go to golden causes. Find a parking space, rent a vintage ticket, look back down at the slippery heart, and then turn to the left where the ocean should be. From this, the most important perspective, where is the ocean? If you can't see it, you're probably doing it wrong. Section 2. The hillside in the hidden neighborhood of $1,000,000 bungalows, inland enough to avoid many mudslides, a fine place at night. Pull off before the entrance to gaze downward and into this distance. Darkness above you, it looks like the stars have all fallen to earth, endless crippled or failed constellations. The girl and I used to come here on dates, talk about writing in hometowns, wonder if we could see our apartments from here. Nothing came of it, just a life together, brief enough. I still remember looking at the lights on the street lamps and houses below, holding my breath as I ready to wish, like a bubble big enough for both of us. 3. I don't know what it means. I don't know how I got here, what I'm seeing. I imagine the air to be thinner up here. I imagine the smog makes it thicker. Equilibrium? I was trying to find the Tommy's burgers supposed to be marginally better than the rest of the Tommy's and knockoffs. Tommy's with an IES, and Tommy's, 2 M's, 2 E's, and Tommy's, TH. I took a right at the one bonds instead of the other, maybe missed a turn, tried to go straight. But the road took me curving and climbing up to this one of innumerable pockets of anomic landscape. There are houses to look at, sure, near and far, lives of 20 fuckloads of strangers, 20 yards and 20 miles away. It's not a bad view. It means nothing to me. What would you do for a Klondike bar? Shit, what wouldn't I do? There was this one kid, we all knew the type, all bad gene lipids and countless wads of sticky bills, thick enough to break a jaw, the kind of boy the ice cream truck knows to drive extra slowly past. I wasn't that kid. I was the other kid, the wretch, the bent screw, the one pounded into the pantry corner after a quick slip of back sass. I found the first kid and hit him with a brick. I hit him with a brick and so he sprawled on the late July concrete while the tattles ran homewards. I sucked the chocolate coating from his chubby, grubby fingers. I picked the sweet Klondike square off the grass where it had fallen, flicked the ants from the melting vanilla, spit out a wayward fleck of grit. Klondike, Klon-fucking-dike, golden summer rush. 6 seconds was all that I needed. 6 seconds was all that I had. Back on the bike, a black banana seat Schwinn, I pedaled ass down the street as the mothers inevitably swarmed, buzzed, reached for the boy. Honey? They softly shook his limp form. I was an orphan. Whom could they call? Who would possibly care? I had eaten the evidence, left the cash in his pockets. No trace of food larceny, perfect crime. Just blood on a knuckle and sweet, creamy breath. So that one was based on an ice cream ad. I'm losing track. I'll do a 3-poem warning. This is predicated on being in America, I guess. In the land where we live, colon, a fistful of stanzas. Daily news runs down the walls of the nation like spoiled pancake batter after a domestic disturbance. Cadres of school children genuflect in unison. Out come the Brillo pads, a little scrubbing, a little elbow grease and bootstrap lard, so that Calvinism remains sparkling and timeless. Outside, blotting out the sun, the massive tottering crisis lumbers through the maples, rears back on its hind legs and roars one last time, bites the chimney off a blue multi-story Victorian and topples over. The atomic harpoon launched by the Interstate Monster Patrol has finally reached its vast cooling trickle-down heart. I have a right to work. I have a right to labor. I have a right to window glass in the face. I have no right to the fruits of my labors, but my strains and grimaces are my own. Unionize is a terrible word. Or maybe it's unionize. I don't want to stop becoming an ion. Pundits say atomizing neoliberalism is the finest system of existential angst. Some people don't get what that means. I informed the cashier the British are called limeys since their sailors ate limes to fend off scurvy, a vitamin C deficiency. She deftly responded, "That'll be $11.74, sir. Thank you for shopping at Kroger." This was all well and good, but as I also pointed out, Sherlock Holmes fought to the death with Professor Moriarty at Reichenbach Falls. Did you know I was once the gifted and talented captain of the 1988 Michigan Champion Quiz Bowl team? I envied myself deeply. Can I borrow $20? What I mean is, can I have it? I'm not like you. You're so elusive. You're so anti-art as art. You are as esoteric as tripe origami. Whoever wants a balloon poodle is going to get a big surprise. Closed captioning brought to you by the great state of Oklahoma. You can almost make out from space the huge white letters inscribed across Tulsa. Down on the prairie, a young American wishes upon a bright red star. Please, God, save Pa, save Ma, save the farm and the littlest piglet. The orbital laser finishes powering up, ready to execute the censoring protocols. And now this one is not inspired by painting, but by nature. It's called Birds in Spring, because we are in spring. The trees, the eaves, the telephone wires, the birds have all returned home. They've gotten inappropriate and raw in the interim, chirping obscenities at midnight, playing devil's advocate on social media message threads, texting eggplant emojis to each blonde neighborhood babysitter. Ew. The lippiest of sparrows mocks my thin arms as I squeegee fresh filth from my car. Every robin shoots meth throughout the weekend, and when you're a bird, every day's the weekend. Blue jays do sloppy aerial donuts in the liquor store parking lot, then hassle me for smokes and change. Mammal folks just want to get by. We can't even fly. You look at us as if we should have done something better to prepare, like pack the rock salt, like weave the nets. Maybe the prop scarecrows in the communal gardens. Birds could really give a damn, but they're saving them all for church. Birds on right-wing radio. Birds shriek to smash the welfare state for the sake of all the eggs unlaid. There's a large snowy crow on a baby squirrel, pecking and sucking. No bushy tail for the little brown one's future. Sharp beaks stripping the muzzled, the dreams of birds, bird trauma. They migrate, so they don't respect boundaries, as if that were some sound philosophy. And this is inspired specifically, last poem, by Joy Harjo's She Had Some Horses. a very fine poem, even though I'm doing weird things to it. More horses. Someone had some joyful horses that did this and that. It's true. They say it's true. Loved and hated, up and down, ridden free across the plains, even as they turned into canned reservation dog food. But I don't want to talk about that. Not that tragic magic, not that Gnostic Jesus level trickery. I want to talk about my father and mother. He who died so fast and she who took her goddamn time. I don't think they ever rode horses, although he might have shot one. He might have broken a horse's leg in his workshop vise with a mallet, so he'd have a reason to shoot it. And she might have demanded as a girl to ride a pony at a birthday party. Not that Grandpa and Grandma would have let her. I want to talk about my mother and father, who had no business raising an unholy trinity of children as mutually numinous as we, total awful mysteries to each other, each plotting our respective escapes from that house built on the landfill, or over the poisonous radon deposit, or on the deconsecrated burial ground. Some bad thing, some bad foundation. One of us trickled out like a boozy fish. He crawled into a bottle, not like a drunk, but like a miniature galleon. Got swallowed by a sizable mackerel, turned into the sizable mackerel, or a salmon, something aquatic and sometimes smelling like vodka and toothpaste, sometimes like gallons of rainbow tattoo ink. The girl rolled the car with its headlights off from down the driveway, then sped away with a band of kabuki robbers. Or maybe they were goth Mustang stranglers, armed with sad music, white makeup, rawhide garrots. They were wanted in one sort of state. It's hard to tell when I struggled to make out the words in her diary. Me? The hero? They had to carry me out. I sat in my padded chair, reading the best books for making me deaf and numb, whatever came close to a drum of wax, some ceremonial offering. They picked up the chair and they carried me out of the house to the horses, which ran away. I never read anything after that, ever again, even this. I was finished.
All right.
They all come from, but they came from somewhere, each and every one of them.
All right. Well, thank you so much, John. Thank you, everybody. We got time for questions. If you have questions, I've got questions myself, but I want to make we have just a short time. I'd like to ask. Let me ask this: how do you choose the art that you choose, and what inspires it? What kind of art do you choose, and is there a reason, or is it just like hit you? And this is for all the poets.
I think it's like a pachinko game. I think you put the ball in the mental slot, and then it goes down one route or another. Maybe you get inspired by a painting, and that takes you to the song you heard at your first middle school dance, which reminds you of the girl that you accidentally sold underage booze to when you ran into each other working at a liquor store, 6 years later, and she vaguely, superficially reminded you of your first spouse who, you wish you had done a little better with that relationship. But speaking of relationships, and it just kind of bounces back and forth from one medium, from one memory, from one domain of experience to the next.
Great.
That's how it happens with me.
Well, I'm seeing Stephanie nodding her head.
Yeah, John, thanks so much for bringing up the question of memory, because that really helped me a lot. The art that I tend to write about in poetry and prose is art that I have a memory attached to. And you helped me remember, I went and saw, because I went to MoMA as a little kid, and if you know the Eye in the Village painting, Chagall painting, it's enormous. And I was scared of it when I was little. And I would go with my mom, and then I'd look around the corner and I'd see the green, and I'd go, no, I can't look at that. And my mom, it was my mom saying, you know, it's actually okay. And it's really, and it's a happy picture. And so it was kind of the memory of that, of going and then getting over my fear. And I love the painting now. Kind of helped me generate that part of the story. But also, I mean, it's true, my mom had very strong opinions about art. And she wasn't shy about expressing them. And I always thought that was kind of cool of her, that she didn't worry about being smart, the smartest person in the room. She kind of was the smartest person in the room, which helped, but she had these kind of unpopular opinions, and she'd always preface it with, let's face it. So anyway, that's art for me is always going to be connected to these memory things. What about you, Anne Marie?
Oh, well, the thing I think about ekphrasis is that what I don't ever want to do is just write and describe the painting, you know, tell the story of the painting, because the painter has already done that very well. And I want to go further then, to have some kind of conversation with the painting, or jump in and take it elsewhere. And I think a lot of the art that inspires me most is where I go into the surreal or the magic realist world of art, where you can really take an idea and run with it. But having said that, I mean, I love Edward Hopper, and I kind of write a lot about that sort of loneliness and isolation that his paintings inspire in me every time I look at them. I also love Andrew Wyeth, and you know, I can think of certain paintings. Well, Christina's World, there's one that we all know. And so I made the journey to the Olsen house, and I wanted to sit on that piece of grass and look up at the house, because that painting is just, you know, in your mind. And I did write about that. And then I walked out to Rockland Lighthouse. So I suppose lighthouses, you know, come up quite often with both Hopper and Wyeth. But I think for me, the strangeness of art is the most appealing for a writer. And I get a great deal from that. Every gallery I visit, particularly European art, well, I say that, I mean, I've been all over American art galleries as well. Somewhere like Detroit was the most marvelous gallery. And then you go out and walk around Detroit, and, you know, you can, all of this stuff in your head. So, you know, it's endless. And it's wonderful to have the world of art at our fingertips when we're writers.
Great. That's great. Well, thank you so much. I think, Rob, we'll take one more question from Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, clearly I know what John Buckley would say to this, but when do you need to provide the image with the poem, and when don't you, in your experience?
Oh, that's interesting.
Good question. Well, I'll answer that first and say that I tend to think you don't need to provide the image. Your poem should say enough that it's clear that you know, if someone reading your poem gets the idea that came from a certain painting, that's fine. But I think it probably leads the reader somewhere else if you mention the painting, you know, before the title. I don't know. I mean, others might think differently about that.
I actually agree completely. And one of the one of the issues that I always have with Zoom is that I think it can feel like a very static space with all these little boxes. So I actually borrowed this idea of the slideshow from my friend Marie Hartung, who's a wonderful poet, to just show the pictures. And again, the Cleopatra poster is kind of a joke. But that is not something that I would do in terms of publishing these poems. And indeed, the Eva Gabor poem, appears in a book with no illustrations at all. So I agree, the poem needs to stand on its own for sure.
But it is a nice thing to do with the Zoom when you can share your screen and you can give us so much more.
It's just trying to make things a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Our next art talk will be on the third Saturday of the month at the same time. And we're going to be with Stephen Rudin, who's a incredibly interesting collage artist. And we're going to talk about collage and philosophy and psychiatry and all sorts of things. And Gene, did you want to wrap up with anything?
Nope, I just want to thank everybody for participating. This is a very interesting talk tonight, so really enjoyed it.
Thank you.